Welcome to Haunted Talks, the official podcast of the Haunted Walk, offering ghost tours and paranormal adventures in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, Ontario. My name is Jim Dean. I am the creative director, and we really appreciate you joining us for today's show. There are few natural wonders in the world as impressive as Niagara Falls. The incredible sight draws millions of visitors each year. The history is also fascinating. From the receding glaciers that created the falls at the end of the last ice age, to the indigenous peoples who lived in the area long before settlers arrived, to the daredevils who have tempted fate in the 50-meter or 160-foot vertical drop, to the many wax museums, haunted houses, and other tourist attractions. This past Halloween night, though, one of Niagara Falls' most compelling stories took a very unexpected turn. But before we get to that, with Halloween behind us, we do continue to offer ghost tours throughout November in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto. And as we look ahead to December, our special Nightmare Before or After Xmas tours are on deck. And if you're going to have friends and family visiting you, these tours are a fabulous thing to get out and do. We share some of our favorite Christmas-themed ghost stories, as well as some of the weird and kind of spooky Christmas traditions from around the world. Information about all of our ghost tours and the Christmas tours can be found on our website, which is hauntedwalk.com. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all three at Haunted Walk. And be sure to subscribe to the show so you know when the new episodes are coming out. And we always love to get 5-star reviews wherever you listen to us. Standing before Niagara Falls, the size of the drop and the power of the water are undeniable. You can't help but imagine what it would be like to be heading towards the precipice without any chance of turning back. The first recorded person to survive the plunge was a schoolteacher named Edson Taylor in 1901, who was a daredevil that went over the falls in a wooden barrel. Though many have not been nearly as lucky. Since 1850, there have been over 5,000 bodies recovered at the foot of the falls. Some daredevils, some accidents, and more than a few suicides. One of the longest-standing witnesses to these tragedies was almost a victim to one itself. In 1911, a tugboat and a scow owned by the Great Lakes Dredge and Dock Company, which surprisingly is still in business today and traded on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange, was conducting dredging operations about 1.6 kilometers or about a mile or so upriver from the falls, when the cable connecting the two boats suddenly snapped, sending the scow and the two men aboard, Gustav Lofberg and James Harris, quickly downstream toward the Canadian side of the falls. The barge was 80 feet long and 30 feet wide, with doors in the bottom to dump its dredging load. The men opened the bottom doors in the hopes of slowing their drift downstream by flooding the compartment. Soon the men could hear the roar and see the mist rising from the massive Horseshoe Falls. Harris tied himself to the barge in fear of falling overboard into the rapids. Lofberg, a Swedish mariner, tied himself to a barrel and planned to jump off the barge as it approached the brig, very much like Edson Taylor did in 1901. Luckily, as the scow moved its way through the rapids atop the falls, it entered shallow water and became lodged in some rocks. only 600 meters, or less than half a mile, from the edge. The question now was how to get the two men safely off the boat and back onto shore. Due to the rapids and the proximity to the falls, using another boat to rescue the men was simply far too dangerous. The Niagara Falls Fire Department on the Canadian side were the first to arrive on the scene, and from the roof of a nearby power generating station attempted to fire a grappling hook to the boat to provide a line. It fell far short and plunged into the cold waters. A call was put out to the U.S. Coast Guard to bring a heavier grappling gun. They fired a small rope over to the men on the scow who were able to retrieve it, and with the small line in place, a heavier rope was added and attached to the scow. By 2 a.m., a bosun's chair, which is a device used to suspend a person from a rope to perform work aloft, originally just a short plank or swath of heavy canvas, many modern bosun's chairs incorporate safety devices similar to those found in rock climbing harnesses, such as safety clips and additional lines. This chair was attached to the rope and slid outwards towards the stranded boat. Unfortunately, it got stuck halfway across when it tangled with the smaller attached rope. William Hill Sr., better known as Red, who was just back to his native Niagara Falls after being wounded as a Canadian soldier in the First World War, he was a renowned riverman and daredevil, and he would go on to save 28 people from drowning in the Niagara River before his death at the age of 54 in 1942. When the chair snagged, the 30-year-old Hill volunteered to shimmy out on the rope, going hand over hand to dislodge the chair. He hung above the raging rapids, some reports even saying by his feet and at times with one hand, for over 2 hours as he worked to clear the chair. Huge floodlights were brought in to illuminate the rescue scene, and thousands watched from the river bank. After 2 hours, and with no success, Hill reversed along the rope to the power plant roof and waited for daylight. At first light, Hill again shimmied out on the rope and was able to free the chair. He got close enough to the scow to shout directions to Harris and Loftberg on how to use it. Hill came back to the roof, and by 10 a.m., Harris, weak and terrified, was pulled across on the rope to safety. Loftberg soon followed. For his bravery, Hill was awarded a Carnegie Medal and was celebrated throughout Canada and the U.S. as a hero. With the men safely back on land, the question became what to do with the scow. The decision was made that as it was trapped in the rocks, and any salvage operation being far too dangerous, the decision was made to simply leave it where it was. For over 100 years, this ghost ship has haunted the Niagara River, remaining stuck in place for generations of Canadians and visitors from around the world to come and see and hear the incredible story. It has survived violent waters and the ice of the river year after year like clockwork, and has provided this unique, tangible connection to the past. All of that changed on Halloween night 2019. If you live in Ontario or New York State, you know the weather that evening was particularly bad. Driving rain and at times gale-forced winds greeted the poor trick-or-treaters. And during that night, after 100 years of stillness, the iron scow moved approximately 50 meters or 150 feet closer to the precipice before once again getting hung up on the rocks. The poor thing, what's left of it, has spun around and tipped over, says Jim Hill, Superintendent of Heritage at Niagara Parks. It really isn't so much a boat anymore than it is a wall, he explained. It has been facing Canada, so we've had this great view of what looks like a relatively intact boat. But with the shift in position, that view is forever gone. Engineers from Niagara Parks believe the iron scow is in a relatively stable position for the time being, but its future is far from certain. As the metal continues to rust, and with the relentless battering of the water, many believe this recent movement is the beginning of the end for this historic wreck. At some point, it will either dislodge and go over the falls, or break into many small pieces and then make the drop. And if it does go over the falls, more or less intact, there is concern that it may become lodged behind the falls at the bottom, which would permanently hide it from view. And of course, this could happen any day now, or several years in the future. The end is coming. It is just a question of when. If you do get the chance to visit the falls in the near future, be sure to look for the wreckage of the Iron Scow, the ghost that has haunted the top of the Horseshoe Falls for over a century, seemingly destined to vanish into history. Thanks so much for joining us for the episode. And just as a side note, Niagara Falls has always been one of my favorite places, certainly for the falls themselves, which are a wonder and a marvel, but also the many attractions, the haunted houses, the wax museums that are there on the Canadian side in Niagara Falls. If you regularly listen to the show, you know I absolutely love that stuff. For information about our ghost tours this month, or our special Christmas tours in December, please visit our website, which is hauntedwalk.com. And be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all three at Haunted Walk. If you are enjoying the episodes, be sure to subscribe, and we always love to receive a 5-star review wherever you listen to us. As always, thanks to the Haunted Talks team, including Michelle Dennis, our outstanding audio editor, and Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com for the additional music. Until we meet again, sweet dreams.